John Lilly once put it this way: there are no limits at all to the human mind whatsoever, except those we impose on ourselves because of our beliefs. And those limits are also beliefs to be transcended. And that's a view that suggests that the possibilities of human transformation are virtually infinite. And we have no way of knowing the outer horizon of what it means to be human.
And really, to understand all this, everything, you have to go very, very deep into a study of history, consciousness, neurophysiology, everything. You have to be the supreme eclectic type of leaning, and you really have to be wanting to know who you are and what everything's about.
And the thing that you'll find when you go to sacred sites, if you're very humble about it, is that you are on a personal journey, and the sacred site will respond to you in a way that is appropriate only to you. The information is always what you are searching for. And it's the intent you give that energy that defines whether it is used for right action or not. And it is inside these sacred spaces that you will be reminded that you are a god, that you are a bright star.
So what you're trying to do is move through the course without ricocheting off walls or creating karma. You're trying to slide through things smoothly. How do you do that? It's called flowing. There's a technique that you can do that will allow you to touch some part of your inner being that has more knowledge than your conscious state does.
Hey guys, Andre Hodge, 7 of Truth, an infinite potential healing here once more. Just sharing a bit of an intro to my new series, and I want to thank you for finding me if you've found me. I started doing what I am calling the theme itself, infinite potential healing, as a separate teaching relative to my multi-dimensional method to the 3D madness theme that I've been working on and offering for the first half of this year, 2021. What I wanted to do is, I felt one of the main things I'm doing is offering my healing, and it's a very unique modality, I think, and I feel it's very special, and I wouldn't have done what I do if it was a copy of everyone else. I wanted to do something unique, and I've combined many things to offer what I do. Out of, you imagine all the data and all the information I've consumed and all the readings, healings and all that, I've done this like magic 8-ball of an algorithm and spat out this answer, and that's what I got about after June 21 last year. So it's evolved over the last 12 months and stuff, and I thank everyone that sought me out and trusted me in that. What I'm wanting to do here is, the way I've always operated is the rite of passage. Okay, it's a big thing for me. If you go to Conscious Explorer Part 1, there's a clip of Bob Frizzle, and he's talking about the Left Eye of Horus Mystery School, where they had a temple where they would put initiates through to test them and see their reaction in the cold face of pressure and fire and fear and all that sort of stuff, to see how they would act in that moment. And what I've realized over many years, and this series is getting into me and all the steps that I've gone through to get to this, because I've worked not intently at a big level, and I'm just condensing this down to healing sessions now. So this whole series will be an offering of certain teachings that, from my perspective, this information isn't really that focused and anywhere. And what I hope to do by offering me is to give a reference point of what, say, is possible, and other people, I think, will hear it, and then they'll get engaged and activated because they'll hear what's in our potential. Okay, so that's one purpose of it. The other purpose is because, like I said, that rite of passage, I've left a big gap, and I've been very fortunate to operate with some very, very intuitive people, far more intuitive than me. And the way you have to be with these sort of people is totally transparent, because whatever you think, you can be seen, all right? So I'm very, like, I display my issues and stuff like that. Like the main body of this recording, which should come later, I've been hit pretty hard for it, and that's why I haven't done any releases, but I reviewed it and I'm really happy about it. Obviously I could do more and better and all that sort of stuff, but I'd rather you see my truth, and maybe when I'm at my worst, so you can I can be shaken out, and if I'm not right for you, you can just determine that for yourself. So I love that courage to be transparent, right? Like I wear all my victories on my psychic sleeve, okay? So everything I've done, like the Galactic Special Forces, all that, it's in the algorithm of my Akashic record and my frequency of my DNA and all that sort of stuff. So it's there. So it's like I'm a codex of codes and stuff. So whatever code the individual needs, they get, sort of thing. Whatever's the right time of their journey and stuff in their consciousness Tetris. And this information, it's funny, it's from my perspective, I'm giving you the answers at the end of the like, say, math book and stuff, and I don't know if schools use books anymore, but they used to give us textbooks with the answers in the end, and you weren't meant to cheat. But because I'm giving you the answers on many things, it probably won't make sense because you don't have the context, because to understand the context, you do have to go through that consciousness Tetris, and I might be overlaying an image of a competition of Tetris. So you get, like, unless you get the right blocks for the lower levels, you're not going to comprehend this sort of stuff, and that's all cool. Trust me, the discovery process is awesome here, all right? It's one of the gifts we have in this unawareness realm, and that. So I love that journey of discovery. It's such a gift to get new realizations, and you get that level clear, and then you see things from a totally different perspective, and I love that shift that you get, especially when you're wrong, all right? So my reason for doing this little video at the start of the series is to actually define how I am now, because I might be a bit confusing, and I don't try and add bells and whistles or I'd puff or sell myself and all that sort of stuff. I love when an individual chooses in their own right, and I give them at least as possible, because like I said, the rite of passage, when people actually consciously choose whatever reason they do in their life, they get the power of that choice. And I'm encouraging people to, not just me, but do this with any healer. The contrarian view sort of video that I released a few months ago is all about when you think it's worst, it's probably the best, all right? So just everyone in their local reality as healers and stuff, and just use that as a teaching in itself. But when you come to me, I'm just going to define how I am a little bit now, because I've had to up my game on many respects, and I come from an IT background where professionalism was very, very key. Like when a client was paying me $300 an hour to do tasks and stuff, they didn't give a shit about my problems and all that sort of stuff. So I'm enjoying this process of getting back into that level of professionalism that I once had, that it's like my raising of my bar and stuff, the perfection in which I operate. So I know one thing with the courage to seek healers out in sessions and stuff is, as an anchor point, as a healer, when someone has the courage to reach out and explore, for me, if we agree on a time, I'm going to do everything to be there, okay? So, because I know being on the client side and all that, and being with a lot of people and helping them get to healers and stuff like that, and supporting a lot of healers out there to help make that transition to getting on the table or whatever as simple, convenient, and accelerated as possible to mitigate all the shakeouts that people go through, because people go through their shadow. Like, there's aspects of them that don't want them healed, and entities potentially, and all that sort of stuff. So yeah, it's a fascinating journey. So I give people that space to have that shakeout, and even if it's not me, that's cool. All right, it's just a really fascinating component, because in this world, healing isn't really, it's not denied, but it's not encouraged. And it's like, most people, it's the very, very last thing that they would want to explore. And to me, doing healing in this unawareness realm is the greatest ally you can sort of have, all right, for yourself in your journey, and to accelerate, like I said, the consciousness Tetris. If you got blocks and stuff that you need an external to sort of help get over, then committing to investing in healing is one of the greatest acceleration paths you can do. And I feel my modality, through all I've done and stuff, and all the things that can't be said that I've done from people, that I know I've done amazing stuff. I'm just owning that now, alright? So what's happened is, I'm a bit different to most people, because my level of sensitivity has been pretty extreme for a long time. Like, as soon as I came back from Sydney, and on the professionalism, okay, and in the public space and all that, I do my best. And if I haven't felt like I've been good enough, I don't really want to be out there and stuff, and I don't acknowledge myself. And this is a big thing about my profession that you probably don't know, okay? When I was involved with Andrew, okay, I would never talk about a personal thing. It was a boundary issue with psychics, because healers and all that, more often than not, it's, you get too much information, and this is what's been going on with me, alright? So yeah, with him, I would never bring a personal thing into my interaction with him, okay? The way I would act is, if I had an issue and stuff, or if I wanted clarification on that, I would go to the end of the queue of everyone else out there. I would either have the intent to go and try and get on a call to get my questions answered in a public sense, or if I had specific things that I wanted to accelerate, I would actually book a session. I didn't do that. I didn't need to, okay? I love the process of journey, but it was a professional thing of operating with psychics. I never try and jump the queue. I don't think it's a cool thing to be able to get access to someone to get all what you want, all right? It reveals agendas and shit like that. So the way I am, like I've said, I haven't had much money, okay? So say if I couldn't afford a session with Andrew, it'd be the motivator for me to go out and change my life, to actually come about to get the money to do that, right? I would not contort the reality to fit my situation. I would change my world to be a match, because that process, you know, getting enough money to buy a session and stuff like that, to me it would be, I would go through the process of changing my life and making it better, and if I could afford that, then it would be a reflection of that, okay? So that's the level of professionalism I have, okay? My shift and stuff, which is, I think, a bit misunderstood, is that as soon as I stepped foot on the land here in Adelaide, after I came back from 2010 from Sydney, and all the stuff I've been through that I've shared in my journey, because in the other teachings I use me as a teaching, as a reference and stuff, and how I came about the understandings through fuck-ups and situations and stuff, is I've had to retreat a lot from interactions and stuff, and in these videos what I'm going to be sharing is many different, it was initially going to be one video or whatever, but it's expanded, and I'm going to do 3 or 4 at least now. But I talk about the massive investment I make in people and taking them to my sacred site, okay? The other thing is, over the years I've sort of said what I do for people and stuff, and a lot of people get offended in that, but it's not about offending anything or telling you they got issues and stuff like that. It's when I interact with people, I have to operate in a reactive way, that if I pick up something like an entity or an etheric chips can self-destruct and they can target the people that are clearing them and stuff, alright? That's my metaphor. It feels like if you're a wooden roof, you imagine a bit of lava from a volcano lands on the roof that's wood. It will burn through. So what it feels like for me is my energy bodies and stuff, like say if I pick up something on my shin and stuff, it can feel like something's trying to bury through my defense and get into my aura and then get into my energy body and then manifest as an issue in my muscle or something like that. And then I might pull a strain of muscle when I'm doing like my fitness and stuff and preparing for missions and that. So I have to operate in a certain level of vigilance on my energy field of whatever comes through from people and stuff. And it's been a story of my life, alright? It took me many years to really reverse engineer this until I'm actually I've gone through a very, very deep, thorough path of extensive healing, clearing, revocations and all that sort of stuff and all the public work. And the metaphor of like doing all the stuff with Andrew and like supporting him and stuff is it actually throttled my energy back, which limited my abilities. So when I've gotten all that energy back, it's amplified all my abilities and stuff, alright? And I've had to once and for all accept it. Okay, that's what I'm doing now. And so I've had a real big issue with interacting and socializing because to me the outcome is the same. So what I'm finding now is I'm committing to this healing sort of path. Okay, it's because the interactions I need, like when I have with people, this stuff always comes through no matter what. It's not about, oh, you've got issues or whatever and that. Everyone's got issues. This stuff that interferes with our energy bodies, which I'll get into in a later release in this infinite potential healing theme relative to what I do as a teaching in itself, is the reality is always shifting, the technology is always out there, the potential for influence is massive, and it's constantly requiring a high level of vigilance and stuff. So when I interact with some, like the people around me and stuff, I vet. Most of them I've done sessions with, and most of them I've done clearing, and most of them are master healers in themselves. So they do their own work because they're going through this stuff themselves. So I'm inviting you to really appreciate the courage to be a healer and the self-work and the self-clearing and the energy hygiene that is unfortunately it's a mandatory thing in this reality and stuff. And so what I've had to do is I've actually had to step back and over the years I've done this extensively. I was extremely proactive with people and stuff, and I saw it as, and I always see this as where the galactic last mimsies being on Earth and aware, alright? Everyone was an investment to me. It's not a negative thing that I did this and stuff, but now, alright, I'm retreating back to being session only and stuff, because what happens is, like I said, if I do a lot and interact with people and it grinds me down, and someone invests in me their money and they're in trouble and they need me, I'm aiming to be on top of my game at any moment, ready for whatever 24/7, because a lot of people reach out for me and I'm a last resort, okay? And I don't invest like an hour. I do 3 or 4 hour sessions minimum. Lately I've done 6 and 7 hour sessions because it's just what the individual needs. And I love, it's not about the time or anything or the issues and stuff. Like I did 3 hours of pranic healing and it was massive, right? Massive. And it's a reflection of how important you are and these people that seek me out and how much I value them. And what I'm finding is if I am disciplined like this, it doesn't need to be that long or anything like that. And I'm not wanting to make anyone I've interacted with in the past feel bad about all this. It's just where I'm at, okay? And I'm hardcore, I'm serious. I'm here in line with Earth. As you see with this series, and we get into it later, I am very committed, okay? So I don't want to get this too long, because this video is going to be quite long as it is, alright? So I'm making this as a preface, because this one in the series will be at the top of my webpage and people will first come to it, okay? So I've got some other things to say. The other thing, if you come for a session with me, what I aim to do is at your night time, a few hours before you sleep, because what I do is, it might be pretty high frequency and it's stuff that you're not used to, and I aim to do as much as I can, because what seems to happen is people, you imagine like you're a gas or a petrol tank and you're running quite low, and I get to a level where I top it up and people just level off, and that's as much as they can handle, and then they get focus wanes and they get sleepy and want to drift off and those sort of things, or they get super high frequency and they just need to go aground and stuff, alright? So what I do is I aim in your region of the world for you to be in your evening, to do it a few hours before we go to bed, or maybe a late night, so then you can go off into a restorative sleep, okay? And the EU region is a bit tough. I usually aim to do in the European region in your mid to early afternoon, because I'm a night owl and stuff, and my creativity is there. I'm not really a morning person, and it usually takes me a couple hours to set up for sessions. So that's sort of my time frame. And if you want a session, think about that and think about when's best for you, and then when we have an exchange, you let me know when it is. The other thing is, I encourage people to do it, say, laying down in their bed, and have salt packets relative to the two shows I made in Andrew's Healing is a Process 1 and 2, all about silver, salt and sage. So if you have that, and I usually get people to have 3 now, 1 on their heart, the back of the neck and the tailbone, because I do a lot of clearing, and it's a good practice to go through, and it adds to the whole experience as well. The other thing is, because I'm talking about what I've done in the past, I'm not really doing that anymore. I'm sort of retreating just to these sessions, and the people I might work out at the level I talk about, because I was super proactive in the past, and I sort of need to vet, right? And I talk about the security of things and stuff like that, because it's just a pretty huge commitment for me that I really am going to be reluctant to do to people going forward. I feel what I do in these sessions is so significant, and it's more efficient at my energy and stuff, that I'm going to commit to that. And perhaps if there's people out there that warrant that sort of commitment, we'll see. But I don't really have any intent to do what I've done in the past anymore. I'm just saying a lot about me has not been known, hasn't been talked about, it's not been got into. I usually hold space and other people talk about their stuff or whatever's interested them, because my codes are triggering stuff, and that's cool. But I feel what I have to share is pretty significant. What I've done is pretty massive, and how I got there is an accelerated teaching in itself. So that's what I'm doing here. The other thing is, I don't hold people's hands, alright? I don't allow sort of attachments and all that sort of stuff. And like I said, my sensitivity is so off the charts. What happens is people text me, I'm already getting all this stuff, right? So this is a really cool thing that happens with me when people, and I'm doing the rite of passage where people book sessions and stuff now, and I'm leaving that totally up to you to work out. I'm not here to hold your hand and all that. But what happens is when people send the money, because value is a huge thing in the reality, it engages the money system, which I'm big on, because before Galactic Special Forces Part 2, Max, Nikki and I, we clobbered the world banking system and disconnected it from the Vatican. That was in August 2014 relative to the Rotherham sex scandal. And so, like with my YouTube channel, I've engaged the money system to entangle with it and all that sort of stuff. So what happens to you potentially when you send the money over is the healing has already happened in the future. So I'm multi-dimensional in other aspects, and all this like sensitivity in the chips, like I'm saying, I just in a text message I can feel the outcome and stuff and the intent. That's why I've done the Trinity of Choice video stuff, because I know what's going on. All right. It's like obvious to me. I just thought everyone else could get it, but seems not. All right. So when people actually send the money, the healing already begins. So it's actually an interesting process. And what I found in the past is after I did so much healing is, say when I booked someone and I committed to going, and I will bend heaven and earth to get to the person's table and stuff like that, because in some future point in time that I have actually done the healing, the process already begins, and so like 50% of what can be done is already done. So if you choose to engage me in that level, just observe it. I don't really want to say too much. I don't want to create an expectation or anything like that, but yeah, I'm an interesting being, okay? I've done a lot, and I really hope this series helps you understand what it means, how the significance of you, the last Mimsy of the universe, potentially it means to be on Earth and our potentials on it, and how amazing our planet is. And all this stuff I share, I didn't go out with any intent to know all this stuff. I was just reacting to crises and trying to work my way through and navigate, and had extremely hard lessons and stuff. So I hope to aid you in skipping some of them if they're not necessary. They're influences and all that sort of shit that is around us, and that I hope if you found me, thank you. And if you get something from me, awesome. And if you choose to commit to a session, then I look forward to dealing with that and seeing where we go. And thank you everyone who has and will, if you see this in the future. And I hope you get a lot from this series, and I'll leave it here so you can get into it. And hang in there, guys. We're the best of the best in the universe. It's our time and we can do it. Cheers. Hey guys, Andre Hodge, 7 of Truth here once more, or Infinite Potential Healing, or my other altar, and I'll give you a couple orders. Crocodile, Star-Lord, Wolverine, Dundee, if you've watched the last couple of videos, and in this one I might offer another one, and it's a nickname, someone by the name of Audrey I gave a code name to, that I helped out late in 2020 and did some pretty awesome stuff with her. She used to give me the nickname Aladdin because I work on crystal mats and stuff, and I use a lot of technology to amplify my talents, and that's why I employ the stuff that I do. And the reason why I bring up Aladdin is this video, what I intend to do is actually get into the origins and some of the concepts related to my infinite potential healing, and I'm gonna name it to claim it here, and what I do and what I've done over a long time. And this is more about the origins of it, and working with a womb chakra that I work with. I'm very humble and blessed and fortunate to operate with that, and I don't do this in the need for it to be known and stuff, but I think there's a big gap in what I do and what people can comprehend. So this is in an effort of a teaching, because perhaps maybe you in the future, if you're watching this, if you grasp the concepts that have taken me 10 years to get under control and manage and deal with all the efforts to undermine me, and hits and constant need for psychic defense and all that, because I guard the whole region that I live in, and I'm owning that, because Earth will friggin' send me to where I need to put out fires, or potentially like Hellboy portals and shit like that. If you look at the grid of Adelaide from above, there's two interpretations. One is it's a big dream catcher. The other thing, it could be a big spider web. And over the years, over the last 10 years or at least, since I came back from Sydney, there's been a lot of people caught up in the web here, and I've actually had to help free and dig them out of some deep emotional holes that they get trapped here and help them get on their way. And I do intend to talk about some of my really awesome healing experiences. One girl I'll give the name of Maggie, that came and found me randomly after playing with Ouija board. Yeah, that was pretty hectic. And it's only just recently I've actually self-accepted myself as a healer and owning it. And I've left a big gap in what I do for those of you to interpret it and go by your instincts and guidance to find me. And I talked about this in the Contrarian View at the end about the concept Andrew brought up by a signature frequency reference and how we're a match to things and stuff. And to me, I like raising my bar very high, and I put that on myself. And some people say competition is a bad thing. To me, any emotional experience is good, has a potential to be good, and how you apply it. Me, I'm competitive with myself. I set a target, and if I don't get it, that's cool. But if I get past it, then I set higher targets, and self-improvement is a constant, right? It's the process of development. So there is no wrong in those sort of things. It's the application of it, to me, that can be wrong. And so I found it very hard I remember I was 14 and my nickname in high school was Aggers, for Andre Agassi, because I was really good at tennis. But I remember, and in Australia we play cricket. If you don't know what cricket is, you can go out and look at it. But I remember one day at practice at cricket, the tennis coach came over to the cricketers and someone couldn't play, so they asked for some help. And to fill in, and I went and filled in for a competition and stuff. And I remember I got into this game with this guy from another school, and it was only one set, so you got the first to 6 games. And I remember I was up 3-0 against this guy, and I felt so bad that I was beating him so bad, I actually let him win. And I realized this was at 14. I couldn't do really competition because I was too empathic back then. And to me, one aspect of my life is, this is with money and all that sort of stuff, is I don't contribute to the pain of another. If people want to cause pain for me, then it's a bit like what I said in the Danny and Brinkley, perceiving the outcome on your life review. People want to cause me harm, that's fine, I can dissipate it. But what I do is I don't cause harm when I can help it. But I hold my line, okay? So if I have to call shit out, it's because it's really fucking bad, alright? And people should know better, okay? So, and that's the signature frequency. It's like Dr. Martin Luther King said, an injustice anywhere is an injustice everywhere, alright? You think about that with frequency. What frequency do you want to emanate, alright? So, this video is about how I came to understand the concepts of womb chakras, of the earth and sacred sites and stuff like that. And the reason why I say I raise my bar here is you are welcome to interpret me any way you want, discern me, cast me aside or whatever, see all the wrong. I am the mirror here for you to tune into and play with, and also see your own invalidness in the reflection of me, alright? You take it on board as me as issues, you can discern me however you want. I give you that space to play with, okay? But what if on the other side is that, oh shit, he's the missing variable that I need, alright? Shout out to anyone that's worked that out here, alright? To you guys, you know, okay? So thank you. But yeah, what I'm saying is, I understand, the responsibilities. My responsibility is to Earth, alright? there's a lot of people here that think that, oh, we get here and it's like we're disconnected from space and all that sort of shit. Yes, we are. But if you understand the incarnation more and how big it is, all right, just to get on the friggin' surface of Earth, all right, and then to work with her, to me, I don't give a shit about what's up there. If I get called up, fine, I go up there and I've released the Galactic Special Forces missions for you to discern me, what I've been involved in. Metaphor is like Flight of the Navigator with the star codes in me with Galactic Special Forces Part 3, okay? The Vatican and all that sort of stuff, okay? Releasing the 700,000 sacrificed children's souls that were used to lock down the grid via the post office network and all the cursed blood. Every time one of the 5,800 local realities was taken over, they'd put a post in it, all right? All that sort of stuff. So it would disarm that, okay? That's the scale I work on. So whatever you think is wrong with me, and that's cool, all right? I have to fucking raise the bar on me because I don't want to get fucking smashed, and it's a constant, all right? And I'm not perfect, and I have lots of shit I'm dealing with in human life and all that sort of stuff, but I'm at a level where I'm very comfortable sharing this stuff. And so this one, I'm not sure what I'm going to label it because I do decide differently, but I'm going to start a different theme called Infinite Potential Healing, and this one might be the origins or Earth Sacred Sites and the womb chakra and the womb chakra work. So what I'm going to do is take it back, go in a few stages. I'll go on the sacred site energy and stuff, and I'll offer a clip relative to a Freddie Silver lecture that I've got up on my channel. And I've just started going through that. And like I said, the Aladdin thing was really interesting because, yeah, there's someone out there that knows I have a bit of a Middle Eastern aspect, and in the reading that Andrew did, he had the Sufi aspect as well. And I've got all my readings with Andrew up there called a Discern Me video that's on my website. You know, you can go through and discern me. I'm fully transparent, so you find what you need to find, go where you need to go. So I'm going to do a step back of like sacred sites and earth energies. Then I'm going to do the womb chakra concepts, and then I'm going to try and talk about the healings I've done for people, extensive months, years, guidance, anchoring, being there when shit happens and stuff, of the people that I've actually taken and done womb chakra healings, which has been my process to work out that now that I'm sort of talking about it, I'm very concerned about the security of the site, and I've got a joke about that, and this is where you can discern me, but it takes a lot of resources, a lot of time, a lot of investment, a lot of effort, a lot of mentoring, a lot of identification of talents, and being out there in public and being there as an anchor for people as they grow and they find their legs, so to speak, on their consciousness and stuff, and all the expansion that being in a womb chakra gives. And there's this Indian goddess who, her father, she got a scholarship to go to India. She was in India and she got a scholarship to go to Germany to do medical sort of research sort of degree. And 2 weeks before she was going to go to Germany, her father said, no, I'm going to send you to Adelaide and I'm going to pay. And like the rupee is like 6 or 7 to 1. So it was like a price of a house to go here, right? She was like, where's Adelaide? But a couple of weeks later I found her and stuff, and she had a lot of trouble here and stuff. But she forgot who she was and what her intent was because of the density of here and all the shit she went through. And then I took her to the womb chakra and it unwound her DNA and it allowed her to remember her purpose, and then she left. Sorry, I just had a bit of an interruption. Allowed her to remember her purpose. And I know when I show you this image, it's a bit windy, hopefully you can see it. I understand how our reality is designed to compress us, right? You imagine that's the DNA and all the memories and all the talents and all the codes, and the talents are up here. What I know I do in the field of what I do is give people a chance to decompress, right? And have an experience in the multi-dimensional, and it rewires you and stuff like that, potentially. All right, I'm just sending these concepts out there because a lot of healings do this, all right? I'm just knowing what I do, all right? It's not exclusive to me, but I'm doing this as a teaching as well, so you have a reference, okay? So yeah, what it did with her is that she was in medical research and stuff, and Adelaide was really tough, and for 3 years I just ran into her on the tram just one day, and we connected, and she was a true goddess, alright? Like, there's a temple in the area that she comes from. It's called the Bleeding Goddess, and it's a divine feminine temple about basically the cycles of women and stuff, and it's in an area that's up near the northeast corner of India, near Nepal and stuff. And what would happen is all the gurus that would go and be in the mountain holes and meditate for 20 years would come down there and have ceremonies and stuff. So she is very, very across the spiritual aspect of things. And when she came here, I met her a couple of weeks randomly on the tram, and I was like an anchor for her during this period and stuff. And while she did her academic sort of stuff, I was, you know, an ally to her during this sort of stuff. And at the end it was quite brutal, and I have a very, very specific sort of criteria that people reveal themselves if they've got talents and stuff like that, but yeah, criteria of their innate actions that prove to me that they're worthy of going and having a healing in the womb chakra itself, alright? So what she did, she didn't have much money. I've been living under the poverty line for 10 years, right? I didn't have the financial resources back then to help her at all, but she was staying with a guy, and she was borrowing his car, and she got hit one day, like targeted, just randomly, just trying to derail her and all this sort of stuff, and shit like that happens to people, alright? So she got hit in the car and stuff, and she was about to leave, and she only had like $500 or $600, and she was moving to a very big city in Australia that's very expensive, so a lot of stress with finances and stuff. But despite that, alright, it wasn't her fault getting hit, and she had borrowed the car, so she took the responsibility of that. She still went to all this effort while she was trying to move with no allies here and stuff to go out and get the car fixed, so it was make sure it was how it was when she got it. She didn't play the victim. She didn't justify, oh, I'm special, I'm exclusive of responsibility and all this sort of stuff. She took it on board, and she still did it, and it was like a core aspect of her that she caused a situation to another despite all the chaos going on, and that was her priority. And I was just like, I got to take you somewhere, all right? So I took her in that, and it's a very big investment for me. I had to get the car. I don't have a car, and things had to align and stuff. It was really, really tough for me, as it is always that I take these people. I have to do it very, very undercover with security and stuff like that. And yeah, but what happened to her is because it cleared up so much, she remembered who she was. She remembered why she here. She remembered why she got into medical research. She wanted to research plants for the medicinal elements in them to help people. Like, she comes from this like remote area of India and stuff like that, and she remembered, for instance, there was this particular very, very sacred honey that would only grow on the cliff, like the bees would have hives on the cliffs, right? And there were these special people that would go out and get the honey and stuff, and they would yeah, there was just, if you watched the movie with Sean Connery called Medicine Man, which is, it was a bit of a weird movie, but he was like this researcher in the Amazon looking for cure for cancer, which is a whole nother hook in society and all that, alright? But yeah, it was like the ants had the cure and stuff, and it took them a while to work that out. But that was a really cool movie in the 90s, alright? So yeah, like there's a whole rite of passage that I'm very aware of, that people reveal themselves by their innate nature or talents and stuff, and then I have to do a lot of mentorship and preparation and guidance and being there when shit goes on, because perhaps I'm putting them on the radar a lot more than they're ready for. So I take responsibility for all actions. So I don't charge this. And as I tell you how rare a womb chakra is in the universe and stuff, to me, it's priceless what I do, alright? So the metaphor of where we're at as humanity and humans in all this stuff, we're like individual last mimsies in this challenging reality. Everyone I work with, everyone I deal with, you're like a last mimsy to me. That's the level of fragility we're at, in my opinion. You know, people think there's change and all that sort of shit going on. You just think like, if you listen to Galactic History 2 and the very final recording that I did with Andrew and talked to the AI, and the AI said, you got nothing, don't want to come with you guys, and it's true, alright? You look at everything that's out there that's going on in the narrative and stuff, it's all predicted. You imagine all the condensing energy that's being like stored up by all the people frustrated by being in lockdowns and stuff, and then people want to go out and riot and all this sort of crap, right? You gotta be courageous enough to realize that that's all predicted, that's all energy, and there's this lateral thing with the reality, okay? If I show you one image, just think all the stuff in the narrative and stuff is a lateral in the 3D 5 sense. It's all given the green light because, you know, when all people are pissed off and they go out on the land and stuff, they're putting all that energy on the land, and the land's just like sucking it up. The reality is sucking it up. To me, it's about sovereignty, and that's what that is, alright? So, with all that I've done over the years, and all that I'm aware of, and all the information I've consumed, all the shows that I've created and stuff, and like say if I'm doing 50 to 100 hours of Andrew stuff a week, what's all the stuff that I didn't put out, alright? That I know about that isn't there. So my attitude right now, the most important shows that I created for him are the two activist shows. They're in People of Our World, alright? And in one of them, I forget which one, he talks about this lady that really touched him that worked for many years in one of the charities, and she was on her deathbed, and she was just like, it's all a fucking scam. It's all a scam. And she realized it, and what she said is, on her deathbed, and this is what Andrew said, it's like, you want to change the world, you heal one person at a time, alright? You heal one person at a time if you want to change the world. And so what I do with infinite potential healing, it's 3 to 4 hours at least. I do pranic healing at the start, and I clear all the etheric implants and all that sort of stuff, and a future video that I'm preparing to do is all about that. There was a really cool episode of Star Trek Voyager from the 90s where this species in another working in another energy sort of like a non-visual sort of range that the humans couldn't see, were doing all the shit to the crew. They were putting like experiments with like this technology that were, say, the Captain Janeway, they were putting, you know, drilling into a skull and stuff like that and messing with their dopamine levels and that, and it's a really cool episode. And then like 7 and 9, who was a Borg, yeah, she could see in a, they set her up to see in the alternate frequency, and she could see all that was going on, and she was trying to do stuff, because what would happen is any of the crew that got close to disarming this stuff, they got attacked and totally smashed, alright? And so, yeah, the pranic healing allows me to focus on the mechanics of a certain body, but what happens to me is people's energy bodies overlay with mine, and then when we talk about stuff, if it comes up when I'm clearing, gives me the coordinates on the body that the issues come up, and then I just clear it. Because the way I see my energy field is I'm permanently connected to the womb chakra. It's not purely me relying on that, it's my innate abilities that are being amplified, that people come into my field and then I clear them. And this is where I've had a lot of issues lately, because I've had to just be pull myself back from a lot of interactions and just hold myself for that the session mode, because to me the responsibility of being a healer is very, very high. All right, it took me a long time to get to that, and now I've committed to it. It's like next level sort of stuff. So that's a pretty big intro and stuff. It's a bit longer than what I hoped to do, but what I'm going to do is offer you a clip of Freddie Silver's lecture that I've got fully on my website. But I'm going to introduce many of the concepts that you talk about, and that's the potentials that you get. It's a bit windy. It's going to talk about many of the concepts that are foundational to this. And the reason why I share these clips is when you hear it from another perspective, it's very interesting, okay? So I'll offer that here, and then you can digest it. I'm not sure how long it's going to be. I saw a bit in it, because I haven't reviewed that in a long time, and it's really, really cool. So have a watch, have a listen, and I'll be on the other side, and then I'll start talking about womb chakras. Enjoy.
Freddie Silva is one of the world's leading experts on sacred sites, ancient systems of knowledge, and crop circles. He's a lifelong student of earth mysteries and a principal researcher into the interaction between temples and consciousness. His new book, Commonwealth, Our Legacy of Places of Power and the Transfiguration of the Human Soul, is a thrilling and insightful journey into the profound influence of ancient temples on the direction of human consciousness. So let us warmly welcome Freddie Silva.
And it's always amazed me how we go to these sacred sites around the world, and we call them sacred spaces and PowerPoints, but rarely do we actually understand why they are PowerPoints, or indeed why they became sacred in the first place. And that's why I spent the last winter trying to understand, about 20 years of experience, writing down something to make concrete sense of why we go to places like Stonehenge and why these places have a profound effect on our physical body. Because, as it turns out, the story is very, very old, because it seems that for over 12,000 years there has been a plan that has been undertaken by various groups of initiates to propagate a worldwide network of temples that not only would provide self-help centers for anyone that was seeking a path of self-discovery, which is what we're all here to do, but also that these places would act as an insurance policy at pivotal moments in our evolution, such as now, when we would need that help the most. Exactly why did they embark on this colossal effort around the world? Well, this is where the ancient texts really come in very handy, because they repeatedly describe the temples as doorways into a paradise, into a state of bliss where a person is enlightened and the soul is transformed. The pre-Christian Gnostic Gospels that were discovered in Nag Hammadi in 1945, much to the embarrassment of the Catholic Church, actually offer a glimpse of this purpose of temple building around the world, because they describe how an organization built temples, and again I quote, as a representation of the spiritual places, and in doing so, created an antidote against forces of darkness that steered the people who followed them into great troubles by leading them astray with many deceptions. And they died not having found the truth and without knowing the God of truth, and thus they became enslaved forever from the foundations of the world. That's a very profound statement, except it's also repeated thousands of years earlier in the Egyptian book of what is in the Du'at, which refers to the temple as a kind of insurance policy. And it was built as a mirror image of natural laws, so that, and I quote, "Whosoever shall make a copy thereof, and shall know it upon the earth, it shall act as a magical protector for him or her, in heaven and in earth, unfadingly and regularly and eternally." Now, these are profound statements about the purpose of sacred space, to the point where if you go to look at inscriptions on the temple walls from Teotihuacan to Angkor, they repeat the same mantra, that these temples were built as mirrors of the heavens so that men and women may be transformed into gods, into bright stars. Well, as it turns out, in every culture there is a recurring association between sacred sites and hotspots of a subtle energy force. And for as long as there have been temples, people have interacted with some kind of force which builds a kind of numinous quality in the individual, and often through a heightened state of perception. And anybody who's been to any temple long enough around the world understands this process. There's something that transforms you, which makes you a totally different person when you come out. And it's proved very beneficial for empowering people, particularly during times of great change, such as those we are now living in. Because there is no doubt that ancient people were able to discern and mark places that are energetically different. And this empowered them to experience direct contact with very subtle realms. Well, why should this be important? Again, because it was believed that by creating an environment that mirrors the perfection of forces of nature, the effect transfers to anyone entering the temple. And in imbuing with the initiate with these forces, the process inevitably accelerates the transformation of the individual. Well, since we are looking at the transformational properties of temples, let's see what happens when people actually interact with the geomagnetic forces that are actually found and proven to exist at these hotspots. And the thing that you'll find when you go to sacred sites, if you're very humble about it, is that you are on a personal journey, and the sacred site will respond to you in a way that is appropriate only to you. The information is always what you are searching for. So, no wonder the temples are described as repositories of the knowledge of the gods, and that imbibing this knowledge allows for a transformational experience. One literally becomes fully aware and engaged with a kind of astral reference library at these sacred places, which then helps you overcome the limitations that are placed on us by our experience in the material world. So how do sacred sites become access points into paradise? Because I really want to experience paradise while I'm still in the physical body without doing drugs. And, because they're very expensive these days. And what do these places do to you, and how do they do it? And that was my big question when I was writing this project. I love the fringe benefits of this research. You get to come across the most strange stuff. Well, funny enough, the same teachings are echoed in texts from Teotihuacan to Giza to southern India. That when you traverse the navels of the earth, you bring back the knowledge from the other world. And a place or person subtended by this meeting between spirit and matter in turn becomes a repository of that knowledge. So what exactly happens at these places? Well, apparently this interaction changes the resonance of your body, just like an electrical circuit. And in that moment, your consciousness accesses a place called Paradisa, which is an old Zoroastrian word from where we get our wonderful phrase, paradise. And in the Zoroastrian language, Paradisa means a walled enclosure. I had no idea that paradise was a walled enclosure. Well, if so, how did you get in? Well, this is where etymology comes very in handy, because in Eastern tradition, an initiate of the temple who raises their state of godliness and masters discipline over the physical world is called a jinnah. And this word eventually migrates to Arabic as the word jinn, not to be confused with gin and tonic. And today we have that derivative called Allah Jinn. We of course call it Aladdin for short. Right, stay with me for a second, because the root of this word jinn, which there's the root of the actual word, it actually transmigrates to Arabic to mean hidden. Because, excuse me, actually, I'm going to go back a little bit. The root of jinn actually means hidden, okay? And that eventually morphs into the Arabic word jannah, or yana, which means paradise. And in Arabic, paradise is a hidden place beyond the physical world. Well, it's funny because in my original language, Portuguese, which is basically laced with Arabic, that word migrates to janela, which is basically a window, an opening in the wall. So, if paradisa is a walled enclosure, in other words, a demarcated place that is beyond the normal world, and Jannah is a place called paradise, which is basically a hidden place. Yes, it is paradise. It is a hidden place beyond the physical. Then this place can be reached through a window, a hole in the wall. And in this, the temples actually qualify. Why? Because they define a boundary between material and ethereal space. And that window, believe it or not, is a place called the entrance. That's why you are entranced when you walk in through the entrance of a sacred site. It's written in the etymology of our language. Just like when you go to the end of the center of the building, you reach a place called the altar. Why is it called an altar if it's not altering you? 150 years ago in the British language, it was still being written with an E, not an A. Very new change. And at these entrances, as well as inside these walled enclosures, there does exist a stimulated electromagnetic environment which is measurable. And properly guided, this resonance does alter the body's state of awareness. So, how do we know all this? Well, the Hopi creation myth gives us another clue. Because one of the first people that was made by the Creator God, he goes to the South Pole with a drum, as one does, and he hears the heartbeat of the earth. And as he beats a rhythm in sympathetic resonance, the earth sends streams of life energy to the surface, and the earth becomes abundant with life. But, the Hopi say, there are some places on the face of the earth that became more abundant with this energy. And they call these places the spots of the fawn. And these were the spots that became sacred places. They became the navels of the earth, and eventually we built temples on these sites. Well, do these spaces really differ from the surrounding landscape? Well, yes, they do. And science actually acknowledges that sacred places are electromagnetic hotspots. Even gravitational anomalies actually occur on them. Let me give you a quick overview, because I know that saturation level can be a bit too much. Every dawn, the solar wind rises and intensifies the Earth's geomagnetic field. And this is a basic diagram of how it works. Now, at night, this field weakens, and then it picks up at dawn, and the cycle repeats ad nauseum. But there are places on the land where the geomagnetic field interacts with a second force. And this second force is what science calls a telluric current. We call them fairy paths, erroneously ley lines, because ley lines are geometric alignments, snake paths, whatever you want to call them, ways of the force. We all have different names for these spirit roads, but that's exactly what they interact with. And when these two forces come together during the day, they create a hotspot called a conductivity discontinuity. Horrible phrase. The Sioux in America call it scan, much easier to remember. And they'd say that where this scan concentrates, it influences the mind and elevates personal power in the form of spiritual attuning. This energy literally raises your resonance, because you are electromagnetic beings, let's face it. And it's stated by so many cultures around the world that contact with multiple places of power builds up a numinous state of awareness in yourself. The Chinese have a lovely phrase for this. They call it awakening the great man within. And it forms our culturally shared practice of pilgrimage. Why do we go to all of these sites around the earth? Because we want stamps on our passports? Maybe. But because there's something that's fundamental in us that seeks to connect with these different hotspots so we can build up a resistance, and hopefully that raising of energy, vibration, whatever you want to call it, starts to awaken something deep within us. Here's an actual scientific mapping of this. This is an actual diagram. It's a magnetometer survey of the Rollright stones, not far from here in Oxfordshire, because in 1983 there was a comprehensive study that located magnetism at sacred sites. And one of the test subjects was the Rollright stone circle, and it was discovered that, and I quote, and this is a scientist talking now, the average intensity of the geomagnetic field within the stone circle was significantly lower than that measured outside, as if the stones acted as a shield. Well, thank you, science. Finally comes to our rescue. And if you ever go there, look for the 3 stones that are sitting just outside the circumference. There's your entrance. And look at how the energy moves through there. And next time you read Alice in Wonderland going down the rabbit hole, think of this. Oh, that's how they keep that information together. Kind of like Lord of the Rings. And the Force. Yes, it's all the same thing. Well, these magnetic fluctuations also reveal inasmuch why the temple builders regarded the temple as a living organism that sleeps at night and then awakens at dawn to the accompaniment of orations from the priests. You see, these magnetic properties are enhanced by the stones themselves, because we always wonder, why do they go to a lot of trouble to pick these huge rocks, sometimes from a long way away? Because these rocks all contain substantial amounts of magnetite. So they behave like weak, albeit huge magnets. Which finally explains why the designers went to so much trouble to source them, because the build-up of electromagnetism and magnetite has a direct influence on your body. It may come as a surprise that all the veins that flow through your body, which are filled with blood, are also filled with iron. And you remember that lovely experiment in science class when you take a sheet of paper and you put iron filings on it, and you take a horseshoe magnet under the paper and you watch the iron filings following the magnet? Guess what those stones are going to be doing to you as well? They're going to be moving that iron that flows through your entire body. But they're also going to be doing something else. They're going to be influencing all the millions of particles of magnetite that are suspended in all the liquid in your skull. And if that wasn't enough, just the change in frequency inside the actual perimeter of the temple is enough to vibrate the pineal gland, which is what creates the electrical charge that creates a chemical imbalance that allows you to have visions and altered states of awareness. And you can do this through music as well, or drugs as well. I don't want to talk about that. So, once you are immersed in this environment, this is how enlightenment is reached. This is how you are able to attain a kind of state of bliss. And when you reach this state of bliss, you are seeing an altered state of reaction, and you are able to reach that place called paradise, because that's how they describe the state of bliss. Paradise is being here on earth, experiencing an out-of-body experience while still having control over yourself. Well, the temple was considered the material dwelling place of a god, as well as its physical embodiment. So the integrity of the temple's energy was everything. And its defilement, whether it was physically or energetically, was seen as the precursor of the downfall of the spirituality, not just of the individual, but also the collapse of the entire tribe. So in addition to establishing a protective membrane around the temples, the builders also took huge precautions to ensure that your thoughts, or impure thoughts, did not pollute the environment inside these mansions of the gods. And there's this wonderful cryptic statement in the funerary text at Saqqara in Egypt, which hints of this relationship between you, the temple, and your passage into that place called paradise, that state of bliss. And it goes something like this. It states that 7 degrees of perfection enable passage from earth to heaven. And I thought, why 7 degrees of perfection? Does the visitor undergo some rite of passage prior to entering the mansions of the gods? Possibly. In Egyptian mythology, the passage into heaven is made through a place called Seket Yanu, and it literally translates as the field of reeds. And it is said to be a sort of a land of paradise. And we've come to know it today through the Romans as the Elysian Fields, a place of bliss and paradise. And the Egyptians always said that to reach this much desired land, one has to pass through a series of gates. So at Saqqara, to enter this mansion of the gods, this beautiful pyramid, you actually do have to first walk down a preparatory passageway. And it's a unique passageway. because it's a colonnade of reeds which are separated by narrow alcoves, and each of these alcoves actually discharges bands of alternating positive and negatively charged current. And these positively negatively charged currents serve both as a barrier into the temple, albeit an invisible one, while at the same time influencing your body's electromagnetic circuits. So, as you're actually walking down the temple, you're actually being influenced by a positive and a positive, negatively charged electromagnetic field. The funny thing is that there are exactly 7 of them. There are 7 of these gates. And suddenly the idea of those 7 degrees suddenly came into my field of vision. Because what you're doing here is that, and when you go to Egypt, and if you do come to Egypt in January, you'll find this out for yourself. This preparatory hallway allows you to dispel all negative thoughts prior to entering the mansion of the gods, because, as we know today, your thoughts are electromagnetic. They carry a frequency. And if you're going into this temple, this mansion of the gods, and, someone stole your car, someone borrowed my girlfriend, I have insurance to pay, all that stuff is being taken into that perfect environment, and you're going to pollute the mansion of the gods. Well, you don't want that. They went through a lot of trouble to build this stuff over thousands of years. And these are the 7 gates that allow you to stop and think and leave your trash at the front door. So by the time you get to here, down here, hopefully you would have been doing what the funerary texts say, which is, you will master yourself before crossing the threshold of each gate. Funny how they knew this 8,000 years ago. So could these be the 7 degrees of perfection that they were talking about? Possibly. Because the entrance into Newgrange Mountain Island is also protected by 7 positively charged nodes on either side of the passageway before you reach the altar and you are suitably altered. The same thing happens at the Cathedral of Chartres, and specifically the oldest part of the cathedral, which is the old Druid site, which sits, just like Stonehenge, with a big cup over a Neolithic place of power. Here you have the metaphorical 7 gates, 7 positively charged nodes of energy crossing that cup, that grail. So in my mind, this is how the 7 degrees of perfection enable you to have a passage from earth into heaven. They serve to protect the window into that walled enclosure called paradise, that state of bliss, so that the energy of the place is not polluted. And I thought we're really sort of making some progress on figuring this out and giving all of this esoteric information a lot of grounding, until I came across some astounding evidence from, of all places, Princeton University. And they have a very unique little group of people called PAIR. It's an acronym. It's the Princeton Engineering Anomalies Research Laboratory. And this is what I found when they began to look and conduct experiments in sacred sites, because what they wanted to find out, like me, whether the sacredness of temples was due to their collective use over time, or because they were imbued with a certain energetic energy to begin with, or because the combination of forces, such as stone or electromagnetism, or so forth, actually made them sacred. Well, during an initial experiment at a Native American landscape temple called Devil's Tower, and I guarantee you it's not called Devil's Tower by the Native Americans, the REG's output was demonstrably affected by a medicine man ceremony. Conversely, the effect of meditation groups at ordinary places like car parks or Walmart had absolutely no effect on the machine whatsoever, or very little, surprise, surprise. But in Luxor, in Karnak, and the pyramids of Egypt, the effects were 6 times stronger. In fact, they were the largest ever seen. And the results from 27 sites throughout Egypt were even higher whenever the principal researcher of the project walked around the sites in respectful silence with a portable version of the machine in his pocket. And it proved to the group, and again, this is a highly scientific group that is peer-reviewed, it proved to the group that the spirit of place itself registers effects as high as the power emanating from a meditating group. So while the temples resonate at a high degree of consciousness, the combination of focus group veneration plus the temple created an expanded consciousness that had a marked effect on the machine. So now we begin to see how the temple exists to, and I quote, transform the individual into a god, into a bright star, because it generates the conditions that induce an elevated state of consciousness in the individual. So to try and wrap this up, and again, I'm cutting down 320 pages of a book into an hour, so I'm sorry if I'm frying you. The global plan by groups such as the followers of Horus was, and continues to be, believe it or not, the total empowerment of the individual through an ongoing process of self-realization. Because the ancestors always recognized that this experience that we're having collectively ultimately is a personal journey. And the more easier they can make it, they can make your experience down here. In other words, the more entryways they can give you to access other levels of reality while you're living in the physical body, it means that your experience on the physical world is made that much more important and more concrete. You have a certain degree of control over your life and the events that shape it. And as I mentioned earlier, the process is facilitated by the law of correspondence, where the temples are designed to mirror natural forces that produce a corresponding effect on the pilgrim crossing the threshold into each sacred space. And as a final example of just how far they actually went to help us experience paradise, I want to leave you with this to think about. That when gravity influences particles to fall as a mound, they do so and they create a slope angle of 32.72 degrees. Which is kind of funny, because the same slope angle is found in sacred mountains, such as Mount Taranaki in New Zealand, or Mount Jefferson in Alaska, or Mount Fuji in Japan. And this reference to ancient sacred sites and this numerical value is even encoded in Mount Carmel, which is called the Vineyard of God, which happens at exactly 32.72 degrees of latitude on the face of the earth. And believe it or not, this angle even finds its correspondence in human DNA. Because when thermal fluctuations produce bending and stretching in DNA, the angle of normal rotation of our helix alters from around 34 degrees to 32.72. And I want to know, how did they figure that out? That is quite impressive. We've only discovered this recently. And this correspondence was even translated to the strategic location of two major temples associated with the rebirth of light. One of them is in Egypt, and it's called Pt1, and it was built by a very strange pharaoh who was very tall with a strangely shaped skull called Akhenaten. And he built this place in the middle of the desert, seemingly for no reason whatsoever, after Heliopolis, the original city of light, had fallen into decay by the 14th century BC. And his intent was to re-establish the rebirth of the principles of light, and with it the illumination and self-empowerment of the individual, which had fallen by the wayside by his time. Well, it's interesting because we have very similar principles in the legends around Stonehenge, which eventually became a solar temple as well. And back in the old days, it used to be called Ambrosbury. And it's a Egyptian-based name, because an ambra basically is an Egyptian name for an obelisk. And Ambrosbury, it literally means an enclosure of obelisks in its original name. And we have now dated the origin of Stonehenge. The original holes have now been very accurately dated to 8,000 BC. Now that puts the formation of Stonehenge squarely in the same period as the followers of Horus, which are the tall builder gods, those giants that lived in the graves that we still find throughout the British Isles. And the correspondence here between these two places of light, between Pt1 and Stonehenge, linked to the exact physical north pole of the Earth, reveals that 32.72 degree correspondence that also exists in human DNA. It's quite profound. Well, the great work, as the Islamics call it, and the Freemasons call the same thing as well, this great work continues today, and believe it or not, it is maintained and promulgated by new groups of initiates. For just as the prominent temples were aligned to a worldwide grid based on that pentagonal series of numbers, one of those numbers being 108 degrees, so it is that exactly 108 degrees west of Heliopolis, that navel of the earth, lies the capital of a new republic founded by Freemasons to further the principles of enlightenment and liberty individual. And I've lived there, so I want to keep reminding people of this. as practiced by the predecessors of the Freemasons, who were called the followers of Horus. And the exact spot of this modern correspondence with Heliopolis, would you believe, is marked by the dome of the Capitol building. So far from being an ordinary government building, this was, in the words of Thomas Jefferson, a Freemason, to be the first temple dedicated to the sovereignty of the people. As was the Capitol of the United States of America, built by Freemasons, its prominent buildings revealed the exact application of the knowledge and energy manipulation angles, including 32.72 degrees between the center of the Pentagon to the White House center to the dome of the Capitol. You've got a triple step of Vishnu with the Washington Monument and the Great Pyramid angle, North Pole to Lincoln Memorial to the White House. This is just the tip of the iceberg. And you may wonder, is this a conspiracy? No. It's just energy. That's all it is. Like a hammer. You can use a hammer to nail to hammer a nail into a wall, or you can bludgeon someone to death with it. It's how you apply it. And it's the intent you give that energy that defines whether it is used for right action or not. So this is just a small glimpse of how these places of transformation offer a window into paradise, how they perform an essential service for the well-being of humanity, particularly when we forget who we are and why we've come here. And it is precisely because we need to be reminded that our ancestors once searched out energy hotspots, then took full advantage of these spots of the fawn to reach a place called Paradisa. And later, they built temples so we would not forget where to find this stuff. And it is inside these sacred spaces that you will be reminded that you are a god and that you are a bright star. So this is our legacy. This is our commonwealth. And I advise you and challenge you to claim it, because if you don't, others will gladly take it away from you. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Hello, welcome back. Hope you enjoyed Freddie Silver. He's awesome. That lecture was from 2013, so that was during the era I was very, very hungry for information, and Freddie had been on my radar for a long time. He's done stuff with crop circles and that, so if you like him, I encourage you to go out and explore him. As with everyone, I don't agree with everything and stuff, but he comes from a very good, obviously highly connected to the earth and stuff. Hey guys, I hope you've enjoyed this video so far. I'm doing this video on the next day after I did the stream, and then I went through the Freddie Silver lecture again. I haven't actually been through that it's from 2013, maybe 4 or 5 years, 6 years since it's uploaded. So it was really, I love revisiting teachings like that, because the consciousness Tetris, when you get new levels, I'm always open to expansion and what I don't know. I'm very humble to the volume that is out there, okay? Despite what I say and all that, you know, you have to be humble of what you don't know, because the vastness of that compared to what you do know is epic, alright? But I'm owning what I do, okay? So what I'm going to do is actually break up these videos into a couple parts, and I've actually thought of doing 3 parts to this infinite potential healing theme. It will be separate to the multi-dimensional method to the 3D madness theme that I've been working on as well. And so what I'm doing is just doing an end video to that here quick, and just saying, because I went through the Freddie Silver lecture and I like I said, I enjoyed it, but I thought there was a lot there that could add to say the concept of sacred sites, which are really significant around the world. And so I made that it's about half an hour. So if you're here, thank you for your dedication. A lot of people only spend about 15 minutes and then their attention span dissipates. But yeah, when I revisited it, like what I said about the DNA and stuff like that, it wasn't referring to anything. I just felt like people were condensed, and it helps unpack their stuff and their nature comes out. So it was really cool to watch that, because he included all that and at the end, and I completely forgot about it. So it was really a revelation to me. So while I use me as an example in a teaching and stuff, to me this is a concept that's out there, and it's been there for a long time. So I've just evolved what I do, because it's like it became obvious. It was like the flow. If you look at that image that I use about the infinite potential healing and the infinite symbol, it's got that the pathway, a bit like and I might put it over the top here at the end, a bit like adjustment bureau and stuff. So to me it was just, you get into this flow and things become obvious. So what I'm going to do is end it here. Thank you for watching. I didn't want it just to be a bit of weird ending and stuff like that. And what I'm going to do is contemplate the womb chakra thing a bit more, and then I might do a quick intro for that and then go on from there. But have a great day, guys. I hope you gained a lot from it. I hope you're expanding, and I hope you're having the courage to step up and own your awareness and own your power, and realize that you're probably one of the very few around the world that knows what you know, and you're very precious. So own it. Cheers, guys. Andre out.
John Lilly once put it this way: there are no limits at all to the human mind whatsoever, except those we impose on ourselves because of our beliefs. And those limits are also beliefs to be transcended. And that's a view that suggests that the possibilities of human transformation are virtually infinite. And we have no way of knowing the outer horizon of what it means to be human.
And really, to understand all this, everything, you have to go very, very deep into a study of history, consciousness, neurophysiology, everything. You have to be the supreme eclectic type of leaning, and you really have to be wanting to know who you are and what everything's about.
And the thing that you'll find when you go to sacred sites, if you're very humble about it, is that you are on a personal journey, and the sacred site will respond to you in a way that is appropriate only to you. The information is always what you are searching for. And it's the intent you give that energy that defines whether it is used for right action or not. And it is inside these sacred spaces that you will be reminded that you are a god, that you are a bright star.
So what you're trying to do is move through the course without ricocheting off walls or creating karma. You're trying to slide through things smoothly. How do you do that? It's called flowing. There's a technique that you can do that will allow you to touch some part of your inner being that has more knowledge than your conscious state does.